Welcome to another exciting episode of the Andre The Beast Crayton Show. Another exciting show, another exciting guest. Let me tell you who's going to be on our show, all the way from the UK, Mr. Hipolito
Hipolito,
yeah. Now, let me tell you where we're going with this story. So, imagine, if you will, having a medical condition, being overweight. We all have gone through this journey to some degree, but not to the degree to where you go to the doctor and he or she tells you you got to change your life or you're going to die. Those are some difficult things to hear. But then you're also a father. You have a little girl, and the first love of a little girl is their father. Now you have a lot on your plate. How do you navigate that beast mindset to overcome let's get real. When you deal with overweight and you go to doctors, they pretty much write you off as a lost cause, because 9 times out of 10, most people aren't going to do what the doctors tell them to do. So, without further ado, let's let him tell a little bit about this journey. Before we even get started, you're from the UK. Tell the viewers a little bit about who you are.
So my origins are actually from Spain. My parents came from Spain to the UK in the 60s, and I was born in the UK in the 70s. And I had a very, very good childhood until time... when I was 9, I actually lost my mum. My father I didn't really realize at the time, but my father was an incredible bedrock, and he really didn't expose me to the ills of the world. But I vowed to myself that I wanted to live life to the full. When I could earn some money, I basically would spend it on things like this designer clothes and stuff that I seeked validation, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And I suppose the journey that got me to the heaviest was, and I know probably it sounds very dramatic, but I can't describe it, but my childhood was sheltered, if you like, because we were living in the UK. My relatives were in Spain, and my happiest times were probably going on holiday to Spain. And broken hearts, basically, I suppose, told me to reach out to something. I never drank, never took drugs. I never sort of had that addiction, if you like. So my solace was food. I basically found the release in food. So I would basically eat myself into oblivion. And I did this subconsciously for a lot of years. I mean, I got married, eventually found love and so on and so forth. But my wife didn't really, think anything of who I was in terms of the big man. So why did I really need to do anything about it? So I just continued in the same trajectory and so on and so on and so forth. So my daughter was born in 2014. I, again, continued like if nothing had happened. And then in 2019, in October and November of that year, I went through a week of chest pains. No. Now, obviously, I don't know what heart attack looks like or anything like that. So I wouldn't profess to say I know that. But because it went on for a few days, I decided to go to the doctor. When I went to the doctor actually said at the time, the consultation was, and they said, I quote, "We don't think it's anything to do with heart related, but we're going to send you to the hospital in order to do a scan." So off I went. I was a bit relieved. The pains went away to an extent and got the results back. And then the doctor that I saw afterwards was our family doctor. So I remember the day I got into his consultation room, I sat down and he basically stood up and said, "I've got the results," and stood over me like if he were my brother. He wasn't a doctor. It was like if he were my brother. And obviously he knew me. We were talking and he said, "Look, I'm going to be absolutely frank with you that your heart is 53% bigger than it should be." So just to put that into context, it's 3% higher than the absolute safest amount. So in other words, it was actually over. And he said to me, "If you don't change your lifestyle, you won't see your daughter grow up." And those are the words. He's a Spanish doctor, but he said that in the translation would be that. At that point, I'm thinking to myself, I'm actually looking at myself as a 9-year-old where I actually lost my mum. And I'm thinking to myself, history is repeating itself. I can't let this happen. Mm. And I did struggle, to be fair. And I basically got into January 2020 and weighed myself. And I sort of vowed that I would do it. But January went by, February went by. Mm-hmm. And my lifeline, believe it or not, was COVID. So COVID was announced in the UK. And on the 23rd of March, 2020, we basically were put on lockdown. Mm. At that point, I had two fears. One was what was going to happen in terms of a job, and what was I going to do for however long it was going to be. So I spoke to my best friend, and she said to me, "What are you going to do?" I said, "Well, the only thing that we can do, we were allowed to exercise." So she suggested, let's go. So on the 25th of March, we went to a country park, which we have very close to home. It's about 2 miles away. So I met her there. We went there. But unbeknown to me, she had a plan. So first, obviously, I met her at her home. We had a lunch, but we had a sort of a specific lunch. So she'd already prepared a reduced calorie lunch. And she already had this planned. I don't know why I didn't ask her to, anything like that. And when we got to the country park, she gave me her dog. So she gave me the lead to her dog, and she said, "I'm going to run. What are you going to do?" And I thought to myself, wait a minute, this is a very, very big place. How am I going to find you unless I do the same? So I had two choices to make. And that day I made the choice that leads me to where I am. So I started to run as best as I could, one foot in front of the other. I had to stop a number of times. And we did this, and I kid you not, we did this for 7 weeks. And in those 7 weeks, I had lost, with her help, I had lost 30 kilos, which from what I'm told is about 66 pounds.
Wow.
So that's the actual beginning of my journey. So I then went back to work after the 7 weeks, and I needed to figure out what I was going to do. So now I would still do the walks with her on the weekends, but I couldn't do them during the week.
Right.
So I used things like apps because, like I say, we were still on sort of virtual lockdown. And there was no gyms, there was nothing. You couldn't even buy equipment. We started to buy certain bits of equipment, but we couldn't really buy loads of equipment. Mm. So, like I say, together we did a lot of things, and this continued. until a time where, very close to where my wife works, there's a gym, and there was a gym opening up. This was the following year, and I decided to do something with someone professional. So I went into this gym. I was absolutely scared out of my wits because I'd never been in that situation. I'm not a gym bro. I'm not, someone that has been to the gym. I was very fearful of being
Right.
judged, of, seeing all these fit people in there and being compared to, well, whatever.
Right.
And then I found a PT, a coach who said to me, well, once the gym opens, we'll call you in, we'll do an assessment, and then we'll start a routine. And that's how it happened. But I remember the very first time that I went into that gym, I basically was looking around and thinking to myself, "Ooh, there's people looking at me, there's people judging me, there's people doing," and
Right.
I wouldn't go into the gym without her. I just would not go into the gym without her. And it
Let
was
me
really, really
ask you,
difficult.
let me ask a couple questions real quick
Yeah.
on from where we're at now. You mentioned my wife,
Yeah.
but you also mentioned the female friend
Yeah.
that came into, let's call it what it is. It seemed like she came to your rescue. So my question here is, where was your wife at?
Do you want me to be honest?
Yeah.
My wife, even to this day, is not supportive of it.
Hold that thought.
Believe it or not, my support has actually come from outside the family home. Believe it or not.
How does that make you? How does that make you feel? I mean, personally, because I'm listening to your story, and my hats off to you. I am a professional retired bodybuilder. I ran gyms. I know the fear that individuals like yourself have walking into that environment,
Yeah.
feeling like they're being judged. And a lot of times that does happen. I have to be honest. Yeah. People in the gym can be some pretty self-centered individuals. So I'm proud that you took that. I'm being real, but I'm glad that you walked in there because we need people like you to realize that you had an issue. You knew that those people might have felt that way, but you had a mission to do. But let's go back for a minute with your significant other. When you was first diagnosed with the heart condition, I can relate to that. When I had my TIA, which is it's stress induced, but it feels like a heart attack, pretty much.
Yes. Yeah.
And I was under a lot of stress, but I'm not taking my life and taking away from your story, but I'm trying to tell you something on this aspect. When I did have a stroke because of a injection, my heart did save me from having severe complications because I did work out. My heart muscle was super, super strong. In other words, it took a lot of oxygen and a lot of blood to make my heart work. Stress became a handicap. So now let's go to you. You're overweight. Your heart is abnormally larger. Did you suffer from what may be angina? Because the stress, the weight issues, all these things magnified with your heart. Were you an athlete that caused your heart to get bigger is what I'm saying? Like, what was the outcome that made your heart muscles bigger?
So basically what it is because you're overweight, it basically gets to the point where, because it is a muscle, it could just simply just got bigger. It was just basic biology. I was actually on hypertension tablets, believe it or not, at the time. I'm not on them anymore, but I was on hypertension tablets. So, and my father was on hypertension tablets as well. So it was sort of a family thing.
You mentioned you mentioned history repeating itself because you lost your mom.
Yeah.
How did you lose your mom? Was it heart related?
No, my mum was actually hit by a van whilst we were on holiday in Spain. In fact,
okay.
So it wasn't. actually, to be fair, my relatives have all died of old age. To be fair, they've not died of any underlying health problems. I suppose most of them were not necessarily athletes, none of which do what I do. You know, even my cousins now don't. I mean, they're in awe because I post on Instagram quite regularly.
Uh-huh.
They're in awe of actually what I do, and even some will say, well, you have to be careful. And I think to myself, I'm getting stronger. This is good. This is good. And like I say, I didn't get, and I don't get encouragement from home. I actually seek this from elsewhere. All the encouragement and the journey was either myself or people around me that I've seeked
Right.
that have actually done this. Even like I say, even now, I do my own food preps. My wife won't participate in the food that I make. So we have sort of two separate meal things. It's not. I could go into it, and I think where it's actually quite interesting because I've done some podcasts before, and you're the only person that's actually clocked that.
Really?
And well done to you, because I tell a very similar story. Some people, there was another person that I told the story to, not from a personal perspective, not from a podcast perspective, but I think for me it was a lot of heartache. Well, pardon the pun, but from amorous relationships where I've had my heart broken, and that's where it stems from. And because this friend of mine, saw something in me. Okay, she's female, yeah, 100%.
Right.
But it was that connection from that actually really, really catapulted me to where I am now.
I'm not trying to tell a person how to deal with their relationships. So let me clarify that off the bat. However, when you're dealing with emotional stress, when you're dealing with the mental aspect, when you're dealing with COVID and you're dealing with all this that you're dealing with, let's go back to your mental state, because this is your wife who's not invested in your well-being. So you can tell me if you want to, did you guys have a child together, right?
Yes.
Or did you put that aside? I'm trying to go into your mind here, because I tell people you got to walk in somebody's shoes. So
do you want me to provide a little bit of context as well which makes it even more? And I'll answer, and you can continue the question, but let me just put one bit of context that I've never told yet.
Okay.
So 18 months earlier, I had actually lost my job and I was out of work for 2 months. Okay, so I was with the stress of losing my job and everything else. Okay, so that's 18 months earlier. So you can imagine, or just imagine this, right? So 18 months earlier, I'd lost my job. I'm in this job for about 18 months. We announced COVID, that you're actually coming out of a job for, we don't know for how long. My question is, wow, I have to concentrate on my health, but I also have to put food on the table. I'm thinking to myself, what if I lose my job? Right. Then, not having support from your wife to actually do this, you have to depend on someone else. And yeah, so you're sort of asking my mental state. Let's just say that my mental well-being journey is part of these 6 years. Let's put it that way. So now you can ask any question you like, and I'm happy to answer it.
I mean, that's a lot on anybody's plate during that particular time frame. I mean, the world did do a serious shift, both mentally, physically, and emotionally. And let's call it what it is, relationships too. Because a lot of people, even though they were quote unquote married, quote unquote happily married, those narratives changed once COVID hit, And you had to see that person every day, because usually the closest that couples really had was, how you doing? How was work? How's the kids? Go to bed. Let's repeat the process. Now you got to stay there and deal with it. So let's go deeper with this question, because I'm also now concerned about your mental state. And the reason for that is, in order to keep that beast mindset, if this person that's supposed to be your significant other is not elevating, then she's a part of a problem. And you have to realize that. I get the fact that you're staying because you guys have a child together, but let's get real. You also just got told, if you don't get your shit together, you're going to die. And I would think that if I'm sharing that with my significant other, it's all hands on deck. What do I need to do to keep my husband or keep my wife from leaving this earth? Because the greatest possession that you guys have outside of the commitment to each other is you have a child there. Like, what woman or man could say, okay, we're going about your business, go on this journey on your own, and you know what, if you die, I'll take care of the kid. That's just what I'm getting. I'm pretty blunt, but that's just how I'm feeling. That's probably, were you feeling the same kind of scenario? Like, you say, okay, well, she's already checked out for whatever reason.
Yeah.
She's not concerned about what I just told her. I'm going to now just focus on what I need to do to make sure that I'm here for my child. Am I kind of right on this?
Yes, you are. Yeah.
That's fucked up.
Yeah,
you know that, right?
I do, but I have to say that, yes, I mean, ultimately those people that perhaps know a bit more about my private life, and they probably could say that. But I have to think about one thing that is always on my mind, and no one can sort of take it away from me. You've got to bear in mind that I was brought up from the age of 9, and bearing in mind that I can't remember my mum. I don't have any physical memories of my mum. The only memories that I have are photographs. That's
Right.
all I've got from that faithful day. I mean, I can remember the day. I can even remember what happened that day. So on the 9th of April, 1985, from that point, I don't remember anything before that. Nothing. I can't tell you what my birthdays looked like, what I used to do. I can't remember. What I don't want and didn't want for my daughter at that point, and even now, I'm prepared to sort of sacrifice that side of things in order for her to have the presence of both her parents, however unhinged they are. I want her to have the presence of both parents, because, look, I don't know what it's like to have two parents, but I do know what it's like to have one parent, and one parent that struggles, and one parent that does everything they can and not really addresses his own issues. Because you've got to bear in mind that my father was part of this, but my father was also a person that really didn't reveal how he felt.
Right.
So I don't necessarily want to destroy the situation with with the happiness, I suppose, of her daughter. Like you say, a daughter's first love is her father. But the way that we are now, let's say, relationship between my daughter and I is incredible. I can't really say anything better than that. Okay, the relationship between her mother and me is different, but I want to be the father that potentially she could have lost, because if I hadn't had that support from my best friend, I don't know where I would have been now. If I'm being realistic with you, whether you have a belief that you that person is meant to be in your life or not, I feel that if it wasn't for her, would I have done it on my own? Probably not.
Probably not. And you're right, because as a trainer, I can give you the recipe to get to where you need to get to. Is it a long process? Yeah, it's a long process, but it's a lot of commitment. But I also see, this is a question I ask my clients too, and it's not to get personal, but how's your mental state? before we even embark on any type of exercise or nutrition regimen. Because the simple fact is, if your mind is already being sabotaged or handicapped, the chances of you really faltering through is always going to be jeopardized with that mental health, because it's all about that mental preparation before you do anything. Now, let's go back to how we tie this into what you was talking about here. And my hat's off to you. Not many people can put aside their ego to say, okay, that's my wife or that's my husband. Let's use both analysis here. I'm going to meet them where they're at. They showed me where they're at, but I see the bigger picture. I see the fact that I lost my mom. My dad was there, but not emotionally there. I've been down that road before. But at the end of the day, this child right here did not ask to get put in that situation to deal with any of our conflicts at all. So my hat's off to you for that. So now my question is, you go back to the doctor. Your heart is already enlarged. So now when your heart is enlarged, you have to really build the muscle and everything to accommodate the enlarged heart. That's just how it is. Sorry, you evolved. So now you got to involve the muscle mass, the eating and so forth. How was that going with you now?
So when I started to do the PT sessions with the coach, that's where the growth started to begin. But I think for me, and it's this is where it starts to make sense. She saw something that was holding me back, because she would basically say, this is, a nutrition plan. This is an exercise plan. And there would be times where I would stray from the nutrition. I would stray from doing the exercise and everything else. Consistency was sometimes difficult. And I'll tell you where it started. So I bought myself a watch to track and everything else. But what I did, and I really wanted this hard, and I wanted this. So I actually went and did the completion of the task that the watch sets. And I did it for 175 days straight. Okay. So I basically said to myself, I'm going to set myself a goal and basically do what I need to do for forever, so to speak. But, and she was telling me this, she was saying, you need to take it easy. You need to basically, listen to your body, rest, do things slowly. But I'm incredibly impatient. So I did it for 175 days straight. I then started to feel a bit of pain in my lower back on the left glute. And this went on for a week. And on a Thursday, I was doing some dumbbell snatches and I basically pulled my sciatica.
Wow.
And in that moment, my world started to crumble again. And I was off for 6 weeks. It took me ages just to get home. And bearing in mind that from the gym, I live about 6 miles away. Mm-hmm. But it took me an age to get home because I couldn't drive. It was very difficult. So I got home, didn't really go to work next day. I tried to, but I didn't go to work. And although my boss was sort of understanding, I ended up going back to work because he was crying for me to go back 3 weeks later. And I had to do so then I was sort of starting again. So I was trying to, you got to bear in mind that this is all happening between, lockdown 2, lockdown 3, and all the rest of it, and so on and so on and so on and so on. And I went through a period where I actually fell out. I fell out with one of my best friend, which really was a bit heart-wrenching. And with the pain, with all the rest of it, there was a time, ironically, again in October, but this was about 4 years ago, I actually considered taking my own life because I'm thinking to myself, what is all this? I can't deal with doing, falling out with someone I really, truly care about. The fact that I got injured, there was pain. It was, the pain. And
did you fall out with your friend because like I said, I'm trying to put myself in your shoes. Did you fall out with him because
she, the friend that started this with me,
because you wasn't doing what you supposed to do because you was giving up on yourself and it pissed her off?
I can't say for sure what it was all about, to be fair. I kind of have a suspicion, but let's just say that we fell out twice. So we fell out this time, then we reconciled, and we've fallen out again. I think that's probably a conversation probably for another podcast, but let's just say that I got the feeling, certainly from the second time that we fell out. Let me provide a bit of context. I do have, and I did have feelings for her, although she said no. Okay, which is fine.
Okay,
and I was happy to be her friend and everything else. But then she said something. Which, now I realize that all she was saying was trying to protect my daughter. So she knew what the situation was at home and everything else.
That was my next question too. Yeah. Like, she had to be closer to you than most to see the disconnect that was going on. The child became more of a priority for her because the child was close to you. And I'm pretty sure she couldn't probably understand why you were still staying in a situation like that based on your values versus the way you was treating. So I guess she couldn't understand values versus reality on what was going on.
Yeah. And you also have to bear in mind that she came from a broken family. Oh. And I think she was putting herself, as much as maybe she wanted to get away from, how can I put it? Get away from her own feelings, right? She didn't want to put a young child through the same journey that she went through the pain, through that. And you know what? Now I understand. And don't get me wrong, I really do want to reach out to her, but there's things that I want to do for myself so that I can be one there for my daughter, which is the most important thing.
Right.
But in terms of my feelings, I need to think about where I want to be this year in particular, but where I want to be and to be good in myself. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Where do you want to be for yourself?
Where I want to be, I actually want to be, realistically, I want to be a coach that helps people like me navigate the difficult journey that some people may actually need. And not necessarily men, but people that, are lost emotionally, mentally, because the physical can come. But it's like what you said, you have hit the nail on the head. And it's a shame that a lot of people don't realize this. It's actually the mental part of it that is what needs to be navigated, because where I shifted was because when like I said, when I I'm sort of going to continue the story, so to speak. When I was at my darkest at work, in fact, we were having a conversation and this came out. And at the time, they were offering a therapy sessions with a therapist, and the head of business where I worked said, "Have you ever considered therapy?" Now you got to bear in mind, I come from a family that comes from a background that therapy is just, what is that? Just get yourself up, dust yourself off and carry on. What's all this therapy thing?
Yeah.
Even my wife is like that, exactly the same. And so I decided, you know what? I'm going to do something for me and I'm going to try it. I had 6 sessions with this guy, and I'm not being horrible. It was probably the best thing that I ever did. And with my coach actually doing reflections every week and having conversations with me every week, saying what's going on, what do you need to do, what do you need from me, and so on and so forth, my mindset started to shift. And when it clicked that I needed to do this as a lifestyle, not as a, just now thing.
Right.
It just changed, absolutely changed my mindset. I decided to do everything for my daughter. I wanted to do things for myself. What was I going to do to, be able to have a fulfilled life?
Mm-hmm.
And I started to think about what can I do? What can I enjoy doing? So I started to do things like classes for calisthenics. I started to discover, different sports. I discovered something, thing called high rocks. I don't know if you know what high rocks is. Not many people do, but it is a very big thing.
What is that?
It's a hybrid. So it's a hybrid games, they call it. So it's an event that you join or you pay for, and you have to complete a course. This particular thing is 8-kilometer runs, and in between there is stations like the ski erg, sled push and pull, burpee broad jumps, wall balls, lunges with a weight. And this is open to everybody, athletes, amateurs, everything. So I basically decided to want to do that. So that's one thing I'm training for. I was a volunteer for one of the events that allows you an entry to this event.
Mm-hmm.
And then I started to decide, I don't like my job. What can I do? So I started to think about coaching. I've done a nutrition course, and I'm starting to do things that will get me to being a coach. So this year is where I want to change from going from my 9 to 5 to basically start my own business and wanting to do coaching.
I think that is like truly mind blowing. It's funny that you said that, and you're right. We live in a society where when you hear those words, therapy and get up, get busy, brush yourself off. But you're a clear indication that if you had kept that mindset and got off and brushed yourself off, where would you have been? I know that's hypothetical, but now look at what you did in the trajectory. Let me go even a little deeper before we wrap up here. And my hat's off to you, because you had a job. First, you was worried about a job. But check out how your life has changed with that beast mindset. You go to therapy. Now you do a whole intervention of your perspective of life. You're no longer working anymore. You don't have to, because you say, I'm bigger than just going to get a 9 to 5 for somebody else. You know what I mean? So I'm overwhelmed with joy, just enjoying what you're enjoying. You know what I'm saying? But let me go back here before we close out. When you have gotten that mindset from your therapy session to evolve to the person that you are now, and you're continuously evolving, let's get real here. And I got to ask this question. Everybody is not ready to go on that same roller coaster with you. You go where I'm going with this? Yeah. So how are you using that mental aspect of life alterations to see what your friends saw, to still accept your values, to still have 2 parents for your daughter? So my question here is, with all that information I just gave you, how are you dealing with your wife? Look, I got you on that one.
Well, let me explain 2 things, and I'll answer your question. So after the therapy sessions and everything else, I lost my job again. I was actually, I thought I could trust my boss, and unfortunately he let me down, and I actually lost my job again in 2023. And not only that, I navigated that. And the other thing that actually happened as well in 2024 was my father passed away.
Oh,
So
man.
my rock, my absolute rock, I lost him. But the positive of this is that I actually rekindled my relationship with some relatives that I'd lost touch with.
Mm-hmm.
So to answer your question, how did I navigate where I am now? I decided to be the rock that my daughter wants me to be, and I want to be. And if it ever came about and I could reconcile with my friend, even if it was just pure friendship,
Right.
I would want to be that person that I should have been all that time ago when I fell out, and be that person for her again. And whatever happens with my wife and I in the future, then someone and a universe higher than me will have to decide that.
Mm-hmm.
But let's just say that I want to be sure that I can be the person I want to be, and that I can be the father that my daughter deserves, because she's an angel and I know that she's my daughter. But let's just say that at 11 years old, navigating what she sees at home,
Right.
she is, very studious, very, the amount of love that comes out from that girl is just unbelievable. We do things, we do a session with my coach on Sundays, and it is the most wonderful thing that we do. And I can't describe it. So basically, to answer your question, is that I have to be that rock, that person that I eventually, when I become a coach, that the people that work with me will have that ability to see what I portray, I guess. So, yeah, so I hope that answers your question, but I basically want to be that rock and that person that can be the person that they expect them to be.
Sounds like a winner. How can the viewers, first of all, let me say thank you so much for taking time out to come on the show and share such a beautiful story. How can the viewers reach out to you to be an inspiration or to follow you?
I'm on Instagram mainly, and obviously then that connects to my Facebook. My Facebook is actually my real name, but my Instagram is a bit different because because I didn't really want to be seen.
Right.
I didn't use my name, which is strange, because now I would happily people see me.
Right.
But I'll have to spell it for you. So it's GALLEGOROJO 233. So it's Gallego Rojo 233, and on Instagram. So I post practically, if not once a day, probably twice every couple of days or every 3 days. So I'm basically showing the journey, where I've been, where I am, and some of it could potentially be boring, but you know what? I really don't care. If it touches someone, then that's the main thing.
That's all that matters. Thank you so much for taking time out to come on the show. Ladies and gentlemen, make sure you subscribe, like, share, follow. Like I said, with every episode, all it takes is one click of a button to change somebody's life as well as your own. This has been another exciting episode of the Andre The Beast Crayton Show.